"Sir, step away from the lawnmower." That was the line. The one that froze me in place, headlights and sirens washing across my front yard like I'd just been caught running an underground casino instead of pushing a Craftsman mower. Neighbors craned their necks through blinds, kids pressed against upstairs windows, and the HOA president herself, Patricia, stood in her floral robe at the end of my driveway like a queen who had just summoned the royal guard. The only thing missing was a velvet crown and a scepter made from her stack of bylaws. You've never really tasted humiliation until 2 police cruisers show up because you decided to mow your own lawn before breakfast. You've also never tasted petty revenge quite like what I was cooking up in that moment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind about 10 minutes. It was 6 on the dot, the air still cool with that early morning damp that clings to your shoes. I had my headphones in, thermos of coffee already half drained, and figured, why not get the lawn done before the day boiled over? I fired up the mower, its low growl breaking the kind of silence that only exists in HOA-governed neighborhoods. Birds scattered, sprinklers clicked off, and within 60 seconds, Patricia's kitchen light blazed on like a stage spotlight. She appeared in her window, hands on hips, silhouette sharp against the blinds. I gave a friendly wave. She did not wave back. Instead, she disappeared. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights painted my driveway. Now, for context, Patricia isn't just the HOA president. She's the self-declared guardian of suburban order. She once fined the Hendersons $200 because their Halloween pumpkins rotted past an acceptable rate of seasonal decay. Last winter, she mailed me a 3-page violation notice because my Christmas lights clashed with the neighborhood's established color palette. Her binder of bylaws could rival the IRS tax code, and she carries it everywhere: board meetings, block parties, even once to the 4th of July barbecue. So when the officers climbed out of their cars, the situation was already primed for theater. Patricia charged forward, her robe flapping like some suburban war banner. "Officers, thank you for arriving so quickly," she declared, loud enough for the cul-de-sac to hear. "This man is disturbing the peace at an ungodly hour. Children are trying to sleep. People have jobs. And he thinks it's acceptable to run industrial machinery before dawn." I cut the mower's engine and raised my hands halfway, as though I really were a suspect in some grand crime spree. "Industrial machinery? Patricia, it's a lawnmower, not a jackhammer." One of the officers, mid-30s, tired eyes, probably wishing he'd drawn a different patrol, sighed. "Sir, did you start mowing at 6 a.m.? "Yes," I admitted. "Is that illegal now?" Patricia thrust her binder open like a priest quoting scripture. "According to Section 7, subsection 4C of the HOA bylaws, quiet hours are strictly enforced until 7. He is in blatant violation." The officer took the binder, flipped a few pages, then closed it with the kind of weary finality that said he was regretting every career choice that had led him to this driveway. "Ma'am, HOA bylaws aren't criminal law. We don't enforce neighborhood etiquette." Patricia's face tightened, her lips twitching into something between outrage and disbelief. "So you're saying anyone can just run a mower, a leaf blower, a chainsaw, and you'll do nothing? Unless it's a chainsaw being used on someone, yes," the officer replied flatly. Neighbors had gathered now, pajama-clad, murmuring among themselves. The Millers across the street were openly grinning. I caught snippets. "She finally lost it. Called the cops over grass. This is better than cable." Patricia wasn't finished. She spun on me. "You think this is funny? Disturbing the neighborhood like some kind of vandal?" "Funny?" I said, leaning on the mower's handle. "No, Patricia, hilarious." That nearly made her combust. She jabbed a finger toward me. "You will be fined. Every day you pull a stunt like this, I will add it to your record. I will take it to the board, and you will regret ever moving here." The officer, clearly done, handed her binder back. "Ma'am, unless you want us to write you up for filing false complaints, I suggest you handle this at your next HOA meeting. We're leaving." And with that, the cruisers rolled away, leaving Patricia fuming in the glow of her porch light. But here's the thing about Patricia. She thrives on control. Losing face in front of the entire neighborhood? That was her ultimate nightmare. I saw it in her eyes as the neighbors whispered in the stiff way she clutched her robe tighter around her shoulders. She wasn't just mad I had embarrassed her. Publicly. And in HOA politics, public humiliation is the kind of wound that festers. As she stormed back toward her house, binder hugged to her chest, she called over her shoulder, "Enjoy your little victory. This isn't over." She was right. It wasn't. Because as much as Patricia believed she'd taught me a lesson about quiet hours, all she'd really done was hand me the perfect opening for a louder kind of revenge. And tomorrow morning, when the first trash bin screeched across the driveway before dawn, she would learn exactly what a 6 a.m. alarm really sounds like. The lid slammed shut like a cymbal crash, echoing down the cul-de-sac. Patricia shrieked from her porch, hair wild, robe flapping, "It is not trash day." That was the beauty of it. It wasn't trash day anymore. It was every day. And every morning at 5:59 a.m., like clockwork, I made sure Patricia's world rattled awake to the clamor of rolling plastic wheels, squeaking hinges, and the hollow boom of garbage can percussion. You could call it petty. I called it a performance. And the audience? Every neighbor within a 2-block radius who was secretly rooting for me but too scared to clap. The first time I did it, the neighborhood nearly jumped out of their beds. Imagine it. The metallic scrape of aluminum cans rattling around as I tipped the recycling bin down the driveway. The hollow thunder of the trash can bouncing off the curb. It was a one-man parade at sunrise, and Patricia was the unwilling grand marshal. She came storming outside that first morning, hands clutching her binder like it could shield her from the noise. "You can't do this," she shouted. "Trash collection is Wednesday." I simply waved and dragged the bin back up the driveway, squealing wheels punctuating her every word. Now, Patricia thought this was going to be a one-time stunt, some childish tantrum after she called the cops on me. She underestimated me. By the third morning, she wasn't just furious, she was unraveling. I'd drag the bins out, slam them onto the curb, open and shut the lids like a drum solo, then roll them back in, all before the clock struck 6:01. The air smelled of dew and sour coffee grounds, the plastic handles slick under my grip. The sound carried across the still neighborhood like an alarm no one could hit snooze on. And, "Patricia," she screamed, she pleaded, she even tried threats. One morning, she appeared at the end of my driveway, waving a violation letter like it was a white flag of war. "You are in breach of HOA noise ordinances," she barked. I leaned on my recycling bin, calm as could be. "Quiet hours end at 6. Check your own bylaws, Patricia." Her face twitched, a vein pulsing in her temple. "But this is harassment." "Harassment?" I tilted my head. "I'm just being a responsible homeowner, taking my trash out." Her scream that morning was less a word and more a strangled noise. She stomped back to her house, robe dragging across the concrete, as I banged the lid one more time for good measure. By the end of the week, the HOA board got involved. Flyers appeared on doorsteps, printed in Patricia's signature block font. Improper disposal of refuse. Violation of community harmony. It read like scripture, but the neighbors were starting to lose their faith. The Millers actually clapped from their porch one morning as I rattled the bins down the driveway. The Thompsons, who'd been fined $300 for leaving a ladder against their garage, left their recycling out front in solidarity. Patricia hated it. Her once loyal subjects were starting to laugh at her. Worse, they were laughing at her in public. At the Friday board meeting, she tried to introduce a new amendment. Residents shall only wheel trash or recycling bins on designated collection days. I was there, sitting in the back row. "But Patricia," I said, raising my hand with mock innocence, "aren't trash bins property of the homeowner? If I want to roll mine for exercise, who are you to tell me I can't?" The room chuckled. Even board member Mrs. Lopez, usually Patricia's right-hand enforcer, smirked behind her coffee cup. Patricia slammed her binder shut. "This is not a joke. This is the erosion of our standards. But the damage was done. Her iron grip on the board was loosening. The next morning, she tried a new tactic. At 5:58 a.m., she stationed herself on her porch with a stopwatch and a camera. The glow of her porch light lit her like a villain in a stage play. She started recording as I dragged the recycling bin forward. "Caught in the act," she hissed, pointing her phone like a weapon. I smiled, raised the lid, and let a cascade of empty soda cans tumble inside with a clatter that drowned her out. The sound was glorious metallic, defiant, a whole percussion section in one plastic container. I wheeled it in a perfect circle around the cul-de-sac before parking it right where it started. Patricia followed me the whole way, slippers slapping, phone shaking in her hands. "See," she shrieked to no one but her recording. "This is madness." But the neighbors were already outside. Mr. Henderson leaned against his truck, coffee mug in hand. The Millers stood on their lawn, stifling laughter. Even Mrs. Lopez was watching from her porch, arms crossed, a small smile tugging at her lips. Patricia spun, looking for backup, but all she got was silence or worse, chuckles. That was the mini-climax. That was when she realized the noise wasn't her biggest problem. It was the fact that no one respected her anymore. As the sun crept higher, she stormed back up her driveway, slamming her front door so hard it rattled the windows. For a moment, I thought maybe this would break her. Maybe she'd retreat, lick her wounds, and let me have my victory. But then, later that afternoon, a new notice appeared in my mailbox. Not a violation this time. A summons. Patricia was calling for an emergency hearing. The board would convene in 48 hours to discuss community misconduct and my campaign of noise-based harassment. I held the letter in my hands, the paper stiff, the ink heavy with self-importance. A hearing meant drama. A hearing meant witnesses. And, most importantly, a hearing meant Patricia was desperate. Which made me smile, because desperate people make mistakes. And I already had the perfect clause waiting to bury her. According to Section 7, Patricia, you've been violating your own quiet hours for years. The words dropped into the meeting room like a grenade. Papers rustled, chairs squeaked, and for once Patricia didn't have a comeback ready on the tip of her tongue. Her knuckles whitened around that thick blue binder of bylaws, the one she carried like a preacher's Bible. The same binder she had weaponized against us for years, citing noise infractions if your mower started 5 minutes too early, or threatening fines if your kid's birthday party carried on past 9. Now, the very rules she had built her throne upon had turned against her, and I was the one holding the mirror. The silence in the room was delicious, broken only by the hum of the ceiling fan and Patricia's shallow breathing. To understand the weight of that moment, you have to know what living under Patricia's rule was like. This was a woman who wrote letters the way other people wrote grocery lists, fast, relentless, and with way too much underlining. I'd come home more than once to a bright yellow envelope tucked under my doormat, scolding me for unapproved wind chimes or excessive dog barking. Once, she even filed a complaint because I trimmed my hedges outside of permitted hours. I didn't know trimming could have hours, but according to Patricia, everything did. Her crown jewel, though, was her quiet hours. She'd fought tooth and nail to insert them into the bylaws. No outdoor activity before 8 a.m., none after 9 p.m., and absolutely no exceptions for weekends or holidays. At first, people grumbled but complied. Then she got bolder. She fined Jenkins for using his circular saw on a Saturday morning. She scolded the Thompsons for having a 4th of July cookout that went 5 minutes too long. Each enforcement padded her power, and the board followed her lead like disciples. The irony, of course, was that Patricia herself couldn't stand silence. Every Friday night, like clockwork, she hosted board socials on her back patio, wine-fueled gatherings that went well past midnight. Laughter, clinking glasses, even karaoke once or twice. We all heard it. Nobody said a word, though, because who wanted to invite the wrath of Patricia's pen? Until me. The emergency meeting had been called because tensions were boiling. The pipeline debacle had cracked the board's credibility, and neighbors were restless. Patricia knew her grip was slipping, so she doubled down on what she did best: the binder. She opened the meeting by rattling off citations like a machine gun. 3 noise violations on Oak Lane, 2 violations on Birch Court, 1 repeat offender on Maple Drive. Fines will be levied immediately. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but nobody spoke. That's when I cleared my throat. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled a copy of the bylaws from my own folder, highlighted, tabbed, ready. Patricia smirked, assuming I was about to make some half-baked defense. Instead, I read aloud. Section 7B. Quiet hours are enforceable across all properties within the association, including board member residences. No exemptions, implied or otherwise. Her smirk faltered. I pressed on. By my count, Patricia, you've hosted 32 documented gatherings past 11 p.m. since last summer. I've got timestamps, witness statements, even a couple of sound recordings. Gasps rippled across the room. Jenkins actually let out a low whistle. Patricia sputtered, That's irrelevant. Board socials are essential functions, not parties. Tell that to the bylaws, I shot back. The ones you wrote. The board members exchanged nervous glances. Carl, her loyal vice president, tried to interject. Surely, intent matters here. These were community-focused events. Intent doesn't erase a clause, I said, my voice steady. If Patricia fined Jenkins for running his saw at 8:15, she doesn't get to host karaoke at midnight. Unless, of course, the rules only apply when she wants them to. That did it. The room turned. Murmurs swelled into open complaints. She fined me for my grandson's birthday, someone shouted. Another chimed in. My fine was $200 for a barbecue. The crowd was alive now, voices echoing off the cinder block walls. Patricia slammed the binder shut, her voice sharp as broken glass. Enough! This meeting is out of order. But nobody listened. For once, the Queen had no control. The chairwoman, usually Patricia's silent ally, leaned forward with a frown. Patricia, these allegations, if substantiated, will need to review your position. Patricia's face drained of color. Her pearls caught the fluorescent light, but her authority was dimming fast. She clutched that binder to her chest as though hugging it could undo the words printed inside. I didn't gloat. Not outwardly, but inside I was savoring every second. Years of petty fines, yellow envelopes, and whispered threats all undone by a single overlooked clause. The meeting adjourned in chaos, residents spilling into the humid night air buzzing with disbelief and excitement. Some laughed nervously, others muttered about what would come next. Patricia didn't speak to anyone. She just stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots against the linoleum, binder tucked under her arm. I lingered, leaning against the doorframe, watching her retreat. For the first time, the queen of noise complaints was silent. But as I turned to leave, I caught sight of Carl in the parking lot. Phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, urgent tones. He glanced at me once, quickly, before ducking into his car. Patricia might have fallen tonight, but the board wasn't finished. Not yet.